the Mohave Epic. As a function of the Mohave Pioneers Historical Society, this museum is dedicated to the problem of preserving and presenting the story of Mohave County. We cannot say it is unique, for all histories follow the same patterns of growth and change. The variants being names and dates. Always the cycles of past and present reveal the future for that individual or society which takes the effort to record and become cognizant of the historic voice. For what is history but a record of man's search for himself and the forces which shape him, and the records of our past but notes on our becoming? So follow the footprints through the historic cycles as the child emerges from his mother-oriented world and expands his horizons toward maturity and the reflections of old age, only to realize in the end that death is but the beginning of another cycle, as the wheel of history continues its eternal movement, crushing civilization after civilization under its iron foot. And he took stones. Man in his infancy is limited in his experiences to the sphere of the mother. The earliest residents to leave any type of record in Mohave County were Sandiaguituans from approximately 8000 BC. This record was in the form of crude stone implements. Much is yet to be learned of this ancient group, but we do know they came from the north, as illustrated by the path of the blue footprints through what is now the Sacramento Valley. They were followed by the Amargosaans, who in approximately 5000 BC came down through present-day Utah, circled the outskirts of the county, and entered from the lower Colorado along the path of the red footprints. Next came the human cultures of about 700 AD, who established trade trails into the area as shown by the orange footprints. Now these people traded turquoise and other goods with the Pueblo cultures to the east and for shells from the coast. Close to the mother. While the young child begins to move out and gradually explores immediate surroundings, he still remains close to the mother. From the human cultures began the divergence that led to the development of the Mohaves and the Wallapais, who today inhabit the surrounding area. Those who remained along the river to raise crops became known as the Mohaves, while those who moved out into the hills and springs to become hunters and gatherers became known as the Wallapai. White man first came upon the scene as Juan Oñate. Father Garces and others explored the area in the name of the Spanish government. Garces, moving across the county on foot, came through Railroad Pass. and in all probability passed within a stone's throw of this museum. The invasion continued as American trappers such as Jed Smith, James Patty, and Kit Carson came in search of beaver. Sticking close to the river, their experience was confined generally to the Mohaves, with little or no contact with the land-oriented Wallapai. Visions beyond ourselves. Now the child begins to realize the vastness of the world around him, begins mapping the area and exploring the world beyond. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848 gave the southwestern expanse to the United States, and the government immediately sent military exploration parties to explore what they had acquired from Mexico. Men such as Sitgreaves, Whipple, Ives, and Beale charted the area, giving their names to many of today's most famous landmarks. Beale gave his name to the springs, which were later to become the site of a military outpost and the beginning of what is today the city of Kingman. His route followed closely the path of present-day US 66, and the wagon trail he laid out a century ago is now our greatest transcontinental highway. A year earlier, Ives had pointed the steamboat explorer up the Colorado River, establishing mutual contact with the Mohaves before heading east across the Wallapai country. The child, as he matures, begins to develop ideals and concepts of the world about him, and the first conflicts develop as he learns that there are others sharing his world. John Udell, one of the first immigrants to use Beale's wagon trail, reached the site of present-day Bullhead City before being attacked and turned back by a party of Mohave Indians. Returning a year later, he made it across the river, but the earlier encounter precipitated the establishment of Fort Mohave, north of what is now Needles, to quell the Indians. It was these soldiers stationed at Fort Mohave who discovered gold in the Black and the Surbat Mountains, starting the reverse influx of prospectors and immigrants from California. Moving away from the river, they encroached upon the Wallapai, beginning the Wallapai Wars. The Indians fought fiercely, but were overcome in a short period of time and moved to a reservation along the river. The change in habitat proved too great. The disease and death took their toll. The survivors ran from the reservation and returned to the hills and springs now inhabited by miners and ranchers, and began their assimilation into white man's culture. We see our golden powers. The teenager begins to appreciate the value of relationships with his fellow man as courtships and contacts are formed and a new love evolves. The development of the great mining industry begins as exploration reveals the great mineral wealth hidden in the rugged and abounding mountains. The Surbats, north of present-day Kingman, are the first sites to be developed as the hills become pockmarked with hundreds of mines. The mining camps of White Hills, Stockton, Mineral Park, and Surbat become thriving communities, and the focus of growth in Mohave County moves from the river to the mountains. In 1882, the railroad reaches the valley between the Surbat and the Wallapai Mountains, and the town of Kingman is born. The Indians, continuing their assimilation, begin working in white man's industries, and their own arts, such as pottery and basket weaving, start to disappear. And the serpentine coils. The young adult begins to establish his life's goals, and while he has boundless energy, he lacks the wisdom to fully accomplish them. The mining industry continues to prosper, and huge cattle herds begin to range the country. With this emerging wealth, a new culture takes shape as the family and domestic activity become an important part of daily life. Prior to this period, it was basically a man's country, but now the men turn their concern to families and the establishment of community and social organizations. Education and cultural pursuits take on new importance in the development of society. The Indians begin to make figurines, jewelry, baskets for tourists traveling through on the newly established railroad. The child of our imagination. As the mature individual emerges, progress continues at an increasing rate, and a real sense of direction is established. The old leaders of the Indian-white man polarity are leaving the picture, while new wealth and riches continue to be discovered. The great mines of Oltman and gold roads are developed. This new wealth leads to more fervent activity and excitement. Extravagant homes and a new luxurious style of living appear, only to be suddenly curtailed as the nation is plunged into the First World War. But the war, to end all wars, comes to an end, and as the men return home, the mining industry reaches its peak, and the county moves into an era of exploration, of expansion. Transportation best reflects this development as cars, trucks, and airplanes dot the skies and countryside. Even Charles Lindbergh lands here while on tour. The only thing left to be conquered is the mighty Colorado River, and the first surveys are made for the placement of dams. And we see ourselves mature. With the power of youth and the new wisdom of experience, the individual begins the construction of his life's work, conquering the last obstacles which would threaten his security. With 5 years of sweat and vision, the first concrete structure rises over 700 feet from the base of Black Canyon, and in 1935, Franklin D. Roosevelt dedicates Hoover Dam, thus foreshadowing a new era in the growth and expansion of Mohave County. Meanwhile, World War II gives the final blow to the mining industry, and the thriving communities of Chloride, Mineral Park, and Oltman become ghost towns. The population of the county spirals downward. The overall economic picture is one of stagnation. But then more dams are built along the river, and a host of new industries that will send the economy of Mohave County to unprecedented heights are born. Our frontiers conquered. Approaching old age, the wise man has spent his energies and now enjoys his leisure while reflecting on the past. But now we have renewed conflict as the new child begins to emerge. This is the so-called modern era, where man considers himself masters of all he surveys. In Mohave County, the story is one of fantastic growth, with population more than doubling since 1960, and an economic surge ranging from new mining interests, recreational developments, to tourism and land subdivision. The growth is directly related to the expansion of Southern California as more and more people tire of the congested and smog-ridden conditions and head for the land of clean air and sunshine. The elderly generation, with more time on its hands, discovers the newly unlimited recreational potential of the 1,000 miles of shoreline along the Colorado River and its 3 lakes. This, along with industrial expansion and renewed mining operations, helps project a picture of unprecedented growth for Mohave County. As a new cycle, every embryo carries within itself the seeds of its destruction, and in every death lies the germ of rebirth. So we begin again. The old culture as we have known it has passed into oblivion, giving rise to our new generation, and while the technological level of development traversed by the new generation will be a far cry from that of their predecessors, they will, in effect, be only retracing steps in the patterns of growth as the seeds of life and death continue to expand the pulsing cycle of history.